It's another beautiful day in my bonsai jungle, and today I'm going to be working on my Schefflera, also known as the Hawaiian umbrella tree. So this is my Hawaiian umbrella tree, and as you can see, it is a variegated variety, but that variegation only shows up in certain portions. And then to contrast that, I'd say this is kind of a more typical color for Schefflera leaves. So you can see the older ones, they get this nice bluish green, like a deep forest green color to it. So I like this variety. I bought it as a cutting. It was kind of just like the branch in my hand in a little pot, little 4-inch pot, and then eventually I got one cutting off of it. I started growing them in this larger nursery container, and now we're finally at a point where we can begin styling this tree. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to style this in a pretty classic style for the Hawaiian umbrella tree, which is that kind of long banyan style, aerial roots growing from it, elongating shape. If you look at Nigel Saunders' channel, I think he still has the Hawaiian umbrella tree on his banner. And I've seen stuff like that at the bonsai shows for a number of years. I just never bought it because they were always a couple $100, which, for a Hawaiian umbrella, I wasn't willing to spend. So this is just, like I said, a cheap little cutting I got from a nursery and I've been growing for a number of years. And what I'm going to do is try and replicate my own elongated, flat top kind of Hawaiian umbrella bonsai. So what we have to do today is cutting off some of the branches, and then I'm going to show you kind of the basic idea for how I'm going to be adding on to the styling of this tree. So the first thing you may notice here is that we have a trunk or a branch that is thickening the trunk. It was originally just kind of grown as one of those sacrifice branches, but as you can see, this branch is a lot thicker than the ones underneath it. So I'm worried we may start getting another inverse taper situation in this area of the tree, which is pretty much going to be the apex because I don't want it to grow much taller. And I want more ramification in this area, so not really a good place to have a huge trunk. I'm going to try and cut that off as close as I can to this trunk line here. And these root as cuttings very easily. So what I'm going to be doing is saving this, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to take the cuttings later on in the video. So the other thing we're going to do is shorten up a lot of these branches. Now, the final style may have it at this height, but the reason I'm still going to be shortening them today is because every time you cut a branch, it causes it to fork out. And then if you cut that fork, you get kind of like 4 forks on it, and that's what we call ramification in bonsai. You have more branches in an area, and those branches tend to be smaller, and the foliage on those is smaller rather than just like these large branches I have right now. So that's kind of the whole purpose for constantly cutting these back. You get more and more branches, more and more forks coming off those branches, and it looks more like a miniature specimen. A lot of the stuff on the sides I'm going to leave because this is going to grow kind of in that lower canopy. But even on these side ones, I'm going to prune that back because I want more back budding back here to continue that ramification, like I said. And then anyways, as that sprouts new branches, that's going to increase the weight anyways, and that will naturally allow these to lean down. So we're going to get that effect anyways, and it's a good idea just to prune these back now and get that ramification early on. It's going to be a lot better to try and do it now rather than when the wood is old or too thick. And I'm going to shorten up a lot of the stuff back here that can get some ramification in there. I'm pretty much going to leave this as the sacrificial branch. So this is going to continue to grow as tall as it wants until that trunk is as thick as I want it. But everything other than that can start to get worked on and styled into that final bonsai shape that I'm looking for. So that's why everything around it is getting cut. So that's pretty much all the branch pruning I'm going to do for today. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is just rip all the leaves off my tree, which seems extreme to some people, but not really. We're just going to do a defoliation. It is the beginning of summer, so this plant is going to have a lot of time to regrow. And now that it's going to be forced to regrow from the dormant buds that are in between all these leaf nodes here, we're going to force that tree to have that ramification or multiple branches coming off the branches it already has now, and the leaves are going to be smaller. So what I'm going to do is just take my scissors and cut all these off. So there is my defoliated or partially defoliated Schefflera, and what I'm going to do now is take the cuttings and kind of plan out where I'd like these. So I want a multi-trunk specimen eventually, so let's say I plant that here. Now there's not a whole lot we have to take off, maybe up until right about there. Keep in mind there's going to be the ramification and the new branches that grow that'll elongate it. So that should be good enough. So I'm going to take this and pretty much just cut off some of the bottom foliage here and make sure there's nothing towards the bottom. I'm going to put it into a cup of water. This is what I've been doing with Schefflera cuttings for a while now. They seem to root really easily, especially now that it's summer, it's very humid. A lot of aerial roots are forming on these branches, so all of those should root no problem. And for this other stuff, I'm going to kind of take a look through this pile here. It seems like most of the other cuttings I have are about this size, so pretty standard procedure. We're not going to do much pruning on that. We're just going to cut off all the bottom leaves that are going to be in the water. Same way as before, you leave that little nub and you just cut the leaf, the petiole, about halfway. And then eventually those fall off and these will be rooting in the water. The last thing I'm going to be doing today is cutting off one more of these branches. And I've been thinking about this. It's, like I said at the beginning of the video, that point that is creating an inverse taper on this trunk. Now if I'm looking for the front of the tree, which, you know, once we start planting the other branches, it could change quite easily. But I'm thinking, okay, if I look at it from this side, this branch back here is kind of crossing over. It doesn't really look the nicest. If I were to cut this off, you know, okay, we can kind of get away with that, but this is just still an eyesore. If we cut this one off, we can kind of imagine that the branch that we planted from one of the cuttings into here to create that multi-trunk specimen is going to take its place anyways. I could cut it kind of back to here and see if it'll create more branching towards the trunk. But at this point, it's already kind of thick. So, I mean, I don't know if I should keep it that much. Definitely I'm going to cut it back to at least here to get it out of the way. And I can kind of take a second look and see if it makes sense to try and get more back budding off of this branch. Or, like I said, when we plant a cutting in here, you know, down the road, it would probably just create more problems, more crisscrossing branches. So what I'm going to do is take this all the way completely off to the trunk. So that's all the work I'm going to do on my Schefflera today. We got it defoliated for the most part, except for the sacrifice branch. I'm going to toss this back out into full sun. I'm going to take these cuttings, stick them under the LEDs in my grow tent, and that's going to be it for today. So good luck with your Schefflera, and I'll see you in the next video.